Thank you, Mr. McEachin, for chairing this meeting and for your leadership on a variety of issues that have been talked about by the panelists. And I particularly want to highlight part of your comments and testimony, Mr. Spears. You're absolutely right. I think the emphasis, at least within the jurisdiction of this committee, is historical preservation, heritage areas, cultural resources, being part and parcel of telling the story of America. And it's not only the funding issues, I think sometimes it's the emphasis issue, that's an important component. With Mr. McEachin's able leadership, moving in the direction that you were recommending, not only on the funding side, but on the emphasis side. Because as we celebrate Black History Month, it's important, as it was stated, to point to those uplifting, soaring moments that made this country indeed better as a consequence of the contributions of Black Americans to this nation of ours. It is also important for the story of America to tell the whole story. And that involves those periods, those darker periods of this nation, periods of slavery, and the vestiges of racism that we continue to confront. That helps our nation understand, and it helps us deal with this issue that all too often is not dealt with well. And I think the Park Services and Interior in general can play a big role in the telling of that full story, and I appreciate your comments very much. You know, we were at a meeting the other day, and Mr. McEachin and I were here at our first meeting, organizing meeting for the Resources Committee. And being my first time as chairman, I was kind of stumbling along, see what the heck was going to happen. And then we got into this very back and forth, long discussion about God, country, and what that means, you know? And we went back and forth, and everybody having an opportunity to proclaim their fidelity to those things, right? And toward the end, Mr. McEachin said something very profound and very powerful. And it spoke to the point about being a diverse nation that we are, we can't cookie cutter our history to fit a certain mold. There's a multitude of things that have happened. And I thought when he ended his statement, it was very, very good and kind of closed the discussion. And then we also heard about this committee should not be talking about climate change. We should be talking about what this committee has done. And that was brought up by the former majority. We did these trails. We did these things for civil rights. And therefore, why don't we talk about that? The small failure to point out that every one of these major pieces of legislation that have acknowledged that percentage that you mentioned, Spears, has been the product and the authorship and the work of African-American members of Congress that have promoted much of that legislation. And we need to do more. I put that in that frame and in that context because as we go forward and we strive to be more inclusive and look at environmental questions from conservation to preservation and everything in between, do it in a different table, as the other panelists pointed out so aptly. Do it at a table where everybody's there. Do it at a table where it's the full story. And there's no unintended consequences to a community because they were left out of the discussion. And so, Mr. McEachin, thank you very much. And we're going to look forward to working with you to address, I think, some of the recommendations and observations that our able panelists have brought up today. And it's a wonderful time to celebrate, and at the same time to reaffirm that we're not there yet and there's some work to do. Thank you, Mr. McEachin.
Thank you, Mr.